Fashionably late, but ready to go. Good afternoon and welcome. Hello there to a Monday edition of the show. Let's get going. Appreciate your patronage, whether you're listening on air, online at extrasports1300.com, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. Apologize for being late. Did you know that the Eugene Airport is kind of like DIA in that it is forever away from anything else? Found that out today. But I am here, and if you're watching on the live stream, welcome to my accommodations for the next couple of days on the road with Air Force women's basketball. Tomorrow night, they will be taking on the University of Oregon. Perhaps you've heard of them. And then on Friday, they will be in Portland, taking on Portland State. So that's what I'm doing, trying to rough it, make it work. Appreciate, again, you tuning in. And I think my guardian radio angel, DJ Michaels, is making sure we're all good to go. Rushing in. I thought I would get it there just by 3, but did not. So, I guess technically I'm here by 3 my time. All right. You don't want to hear about all this. Let's get going with the Broncos, shall we? 719-247-1313. That is the number if you would like to interact with the show. I can and will check text messages over the course of the program. So that was pretty much the same as the Browns game, right? I mean, very similar. Two games in a row now. The Denver Broncos greatly benefit from a catastrophic mistake made by their opponent. With Jameis Winston, it was a few catastrophic mistakes. With the Indianapolis Colts, it, of course, was Jonathan Taylor inexplicably. And there's just no, and I'm glad to see that he owned up to it after the game. There's no excuse, right? Get into the end zone and then do whatever you want with the football. That completely changed the game. Broncos were not playing well offensively. Defensively, they were playing fine. Had a little bit of trouble early on with Anthony Richardson. I told you last week, when the Broncos struggle is a strong word, but when they aren't at their best when it comes to run defense, it's when they play a quarterback that you have to worry about his legs. Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson. But overall, I mean, the defense played as well as you could expect them to. The offense was lagging behind, and then that entire game shifted. Goes from 19-7 pending the extra point to anyone's game, and the Broncos took control of it. So two games in a row here. Bo Nix has not played well. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. And catastrophic mistakes from the opposing team changes the game for the Denver Broncos. A game where you don't feel like they're going to win. Something happens, completely changes the momentum, and they win. Here's what the Broncos are. Broncos right now, I know they jumped up over the Chargers, and we'll find out on Thursday when the Broncos play the Chargers if we can make a case that the Broncos are better. But for the last few weeks, the Denver Broncos have been the baseline for a playoff team, right? And I equate it to the bouncer outside of the club. If you've gone, and of course you have, because who doesn't go to the club? There's kind of an inner sanctum, right? There's outside, you got to get in, you got to get through the bouncer at the door, and then if you're a high roller, if you're VIP, then there's an inner sanctum that you get into. The Broncos over the last few weeks, really much of the season, have acted like the bouncer outside the door, right? If you, and the Colts are a perfect example last night or yesterday. Colts want to get into the playoffs. They have to go through Denver to get in. And the Broncos have, instead of a bouncer enforcing the dress code and the correct female to male ratio, they're saying you're not talented enough or you're too careless with the football. What the Broncos have done, it's not been pretty over the past couple of games, but what they have shown, especially the last 2 weeks, but this has been the case with them for most of the season. If you're not buttoned up, right? If you're undisciplined, if you make the big mistake, they will capitalize on it and they will beat you. That's what the Broncos did yesterday. That's what they did to Cleveland in a game where for much of it, the Broncos were not the better team. But Bo Nix throws 3 interceptions. None of them hurt the Broncos, really. Right? None of them were returned for touchdowns. None of them were deep in the Broncos half of the field to give Indianapolis great field position. So you don't want to see those turnovers, but they were in parts of the field where the Broncos could still recover. The Colts made mistakes that they couldn't recover from. And that's what the Broncos have been doing the last few weeks. They haven't been at their best, which may be concerning in a way when it comes to their chances in the postseason. But they make you pay if you make that catastrophic mistake. And there's a little bit of Kansas City Chiefs in them from this standpoint. The Chiefs, because of how good they are, all you have to do is make a tiny little mistake and they'll make you pay for it and you'll lose the game. The Broncos right now, you got to make a big mistake, but they'll still capitalize on it. And Broncos for years, and I feel like I'm repeating myself from the Cleveland game, but these games were so similar. I feel like a lot of the same things apply. Broncos last year don't win that game. Even with Jonathan Taylor's, brain cramp, they don't win that game. Not last year, not the year before, not the year before that. So even in these last 2 wins, as unappealing and as much as they've left something to be desired, there are games that you can say Broncos don't win a year ago. And it's because of the coach. It's because of the defense. And yesterday was special teams. It's why they have 3 phases, right? One wasn't working, the other 2 were. So it's not a pretty win. But what the Broncos have shown is they're not in the inner sanctum. They're not gatekeeping the inner sanctum, the VIP room, right? That's Buffalo, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City. But if you want to get into the postseason, you have to go through Denver. Because they're holding down, until yesterday, they were holding down the 7th spot. And they have bounced Indy, Cleveland, and a lot of the teams on their schedule. Atlanta, look at what has happened to Atlanta after they played the Denver Broncos. So the Broncos are taking care of business against these fringe playoff teams, mediocre teams, bad teams. These are the teams that Denver continues to beat. But it wasn't that long ago that they were in that boat. So I do think the last 2 weeks has been an improvement, has showcased the improvement of the Denver Broncos. But if they're going to be a serious contender, if they're going to take the next step, whether it's this season or in seasons beyond, they got to start being able to take advantage of the tiny mistakes. And that's what they're building toward. Nick Benito yesterday, want to talk about him too, right off the top here. He has made a big difference with the Denver Broncos, and that obviously goes without saying. Back-to-back weeks now, he's taken a turnover back the other way for a touchdown. The Broncos, with this scaffolding, this foundation, if you will, of the offensive and defensive lines. Okay, they have that foundation, they have that scaffolding, but the other positions that are important that move a team from one tier to the next. Quarterback, they have that now. They have at least one weapon in the passing game in Cortland Sutton. They have a shutdown corner in Pat Surtain, and now they have this playmaking pass rusher in Nick Benito, who we talked about last week, should be in serious consideration for the Defensive Player of the Year. Both he and Surtain. So you focus on Bo Nix, and obviously he's made – really you look at Bo Nix on one side and Nick Benito on the other. They have been the change on those two sides of the football. The Broncos offense now much better because they have Bo Nix. The Broncos defense, which was good last year after the Miami game, but now they're making those game-changing plays. And Nick Benito has been at the center of many of them. So the difference that he and Bo Nix have made together, because Cortland Sutton existed prior to these two guys arriving, Pat Surtain was there, and yet the results weren't. So we shower Bo Nix with praise, and deservedly so. He's playing beyond his years, the last 2 weeks notwithstanding. And then you have Nick Benito on the other side of the ball, who's making huge plays for the defense and turning them from a good defense that doesn't give up a lot of points to a defense that creates turnovers, that gets sacks, and that changes games. And he and the Broncos defense help change that game, or help keep it changed. If Jonathan Taylor changed the game with his decision, the Broncos defense kept it changed. Broncos aren't on that. There's levels to this in terms of where the Broncos lie in the pecking order in the AFC. But they have shown week in and week out that they deserve, in a 7-team field, deserve to be in. And they showed it yesterday. It wasn't their best game by any stretch of the imagination. But once again, they were the team that made mistakes, but not the mistake. And that's what they're exposing in teams week in and week out. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. We got Monday Night Football. We have the Bears-Vikings game coming up for you at 5:30. Coming up next, it was a busy weekend, but a good weekend for Colorado sports. Let's talk about what happened in New York on Saturday next on Extra Sports 1300. I am here. And I appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget, tonight we have 2 games on the Monday night slate, which means it's time to report for game day at Hooters of Colorado Springs. With craveable wings, ice cold beer, plenty of big screen TVs, and the world famous Hooters girls, it is the #1 franchise in the league. Get into Hooters for all the football action. So busy weekend, but as I said, a good weekend. If you're a Colorado sports fan, what happened on Saturday was Travis Hunter winning the Heisman. Wasn't shocked, obviously. I was a bit surprised with the margin. To be honest, I thought it wouldn't be as close as it was. However, I think one thing, this is just the way I look at it. I'm not a big ranked choice guy. And I've talked about this with the MVP voting. To me, it's who's your guy? So I would be curious to find out the margin in first place votes, whether that was the closest, or is the fact that Ashton Genty was no brainer. It's either Hunter or Genty. I just don't see, and I know other guys got votes. I don't see how anyone could get a first place vote other than those 2. I would just be curious to find out whether the differential between first place votes would be the closest in years. Seems like a lot of it was those second place votes that Ashton Genty, it's the point system, but it doesn't matter. In the end, Travis Hunter wins the Heisman and he deserves it. And what's so unfortunate, I think, about this is that there is a palpable collective sigh of relief when it comes to this Heisman vote. And it reminds me a lot of the feel if you feel that way, then that's fine. But it got to the point where the discourse was more about tearing down Travis Hunter than making a case for Ashton Genty. And that's what I hate about the whole thing. Ashton Genty was great. Nobody in their right mind would disagree with the notion that Ashton Genty was phenomenal. And in almost any other year, he would win. But what happened this year with Travis Hunter is so remarkable, so historic. We just haven't seen somebody play both sides of the football like this. Now, if you want to take up for a Mount West player that was wronged, I got one for you. The one over the weekend where I said, I don't get that. That was Travis Hunter winning the Bolitnikoff. If you want to talk about a Mountain West player that was hard done by, it's Nick Nash of San Jose State. because I felt like, and I've always said this, Travis Hunter is not the best wide receiver in college football. He's one of them, but he's not the best. But you take into account that for me, he is the best defensive back in college football, and he's one of the best, certainly deserving of being nominated for the Biletnikoff. And you combine those two things and you say he wins the Heisman. I don't think he was the best wide receiver in college football this year. So, but that's a Biletnikoff argument. That's not a Heisman argument. This isn't the argument that Ashton Jeanty has, and I've acknowledged this the entire time, is a value argument, is the MVP type argument. Take Ashton Jeanty away from Boise State, take Travis Hunter away from the Buffs. Where are these two teams? Swap places. And I've always acknowledged that's an argument. And that's the thing, is that they both have arguments for them. But the point is, who has the better argument? The Heisman Trophy goes to the best player in college football. The best player in college football this year was Travis Hunter because he played at an elite level on both sides of the football. Ashton Jeanty was phenomenal, and I understand that he feels a bit slighted. I understand that people who take up for the mid-majors, if you will, the group of five, are upset. And I understand that, because the time for these players to win these awards is so finite. It's not even like the MVP. Nikola Jokic, forget that he already won the MVP, but let's say he was going for his first one 2 years ago. As upset as you would be that Nikola Jokic didn't win, you'd at least say, well, at least he's got time. Ashton Jeanty has no more time. So I get it. It's going to be, the feeling is going to be even more intense. Because Ashton Jeanty, that's it. He's never going to get a chance at the Heisman Trophy again. But too many people, I think, have taken that feeling and turned it into some ugly discourse. This is a situation where you can actually talk about both candidates and all the reasons are for why they should be instead of why they shouldn't be. And it reminded me again of the Jokic and Embiid discussion, because what was the argument against Jokic? Oh, he's just a stat geek darling. He's an analytics darling. Travis Hunter is just a media darling. Look at the way the people voted. People wanted Ashton Jeanty. It's the media that wanted Travis Hunter. He's a media darling. Completely ignoring the fact that both of those, to be darlings, if we're accepting that argument, to be a darling of the media or to be a darling of the analytics community, you have to be doing something right. Right? Nikola Jokic was the darling of the analytics community, still is, because he's doing things that we can now measure that haven't been done in 40 or 50 years. And it's being done at a level that the vast majority of people in the NBA aren't doing. It's the same with Travis Hunter. The media loves Travis Hunter because the media has not seen something like Travis Hunter. And we could talk about Charles Woodson, we could talk about Dion, we could talk about Champ Bailey. None of them did it to the level that Travis Hunter did. But that gets dismissed. Oh, they're just a media darling. Well, they're not making up how good he is. He's good. He's special. He's generational. And when somebody does something like that, it deserves to be rewarded. Ashton Genty did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. And it sucks only one guy can win. But here's the opportunity for Ashton Genty. Comparing this Heisman debate to the MVP conversation in the NBA 2 years ago. Joel Embiid won the MVP. What did Nikola Jokic turn around and do? Whether he was motivated by losing or not, what did he turn around and did? Went absolutely scorched earth and carried the Denver Nuggets to their first NBA title in franchise history. Ashton Genty has the same opportunity. And the debate would be reignited and be an even better debate if Ashton Genty leads Boise State to a national title, which they're in the field of 12. So Ashton Genty has the same opportunity that Jokic did 2 years ago. Have the last laugh. Get the more important prize. Because listening to Ashton Genty, he'd take a national championship over a Heisman. Now, he wanted the Heisman, sure. Based on the criteria, there was a player that was more outstanding. He was a better football player than Ashton Genty was. But now we can put aside the discourse because the Ashton Genty truthers they were a little much at times. Don't tear down what Travis Hunter is doing. Don't minimize what Travis Hunter is doing. And I'd say the same thing towards Ashton Genty. Let's not minimize what Ashton Genty's doing. It's remarkable. We were choosing between two remarkable candidates, two remarkable college football players. And this Heisman Trophy race should be remembered for years to come. We should be talking 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, when both of these guys are elite NFL players. What great Heisman debate that was. What great Heisman competition that was. Sometimes you could be deserving and not get the thing that you're deserving of. It happens. And that's what happened to Ashton Genty any other year. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, what a weekend at Ball Arena. Think about the Nuggets and the Avs, what they were able to do over the weekend. We'll talk about that next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman in Eugene, Oregon. I have visited Eugene during what they are calling a rain event. My Uber driver from the airport says, "Yeah, we're scheduled to have a rain event over the next couple of weeks," and that sounds ominous. So, yeah, you can't see on the live stream because I have the shades closed, but don't need anyone peeping in on what I'm doing during the show. Um, a rain event. So, Air Force women's basketball plays Oregon tomorrow night and then Portland on Friday. Um, what I haven't heard anything yet. Maybe you have. Do we know when the jersey retirement ceremony for Mackenzie Blackwood will be? Are the Avs doing that the next home game, or are they going to wait till later in the season, or what are they going to do? Because I need to know. I'd like to be in the building when history is made and Mackenzie Blackwood's number gets raised to the rafters. That's what it feels like, right? Mackenzie Blackwood. But look, all joking aside, the performance he had in his debut against Nashville on Saturday was exactly what the Avs needed. You wondered, they come back from the long road trip, and the old saying goes, the toughest game of a road trip is the first game back at home. And they didn't look very good at all against Utah. But now Jared Bednar talks about that there's an illness going around. It's also that time of year, too, for teams to have a bug floating around that's impacting all of them. And it's like, oh, it's that, too. The Avs for 2 games, these first 2 games since that amazing road trip, the skaters have looked not good. Just slow, just a step slow, which when you hear Jared Bednar talk about the illness sweeping through the team, you kind of understand. But whether it's an illness, whether it's just, being tired, whether it's just an off night, what Mackenzie Blackwood gave the Avalanche on Saturday is part of the job description for a goalie. And a number 1 goalie, which is what Mackenzie Blackwood is supposed to be. The Avalanche as a whole, their skaters did not have it. They have not had it for the last 2 games. Scott Wedgwood wasn't able to pick them up. But in fairness to Scott Wedgwood, given the way that game went, he would have had to shut out Utah. So I don't know that that's a totally fair ask. But what Mackenzie Blackwood gave the Avs is something they have so rarely had over the last couple years, which is they don't have it, but the goalie does. That's that symbiotic relationship that goes on between the skaters and their goalie. If the goalie doesn't have it, it's incumbent upon the skaters to do their part, to give them goal support, to be a little bit better defensively, to help them out. And the Avs have been doing that with their goaltenders for the last 2 years, right? It's enough of that. Now it's time for a goalie. Not every game. We know how this team is built. This team is built through Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, the best trio in the NHL. That's how they're built. That's how they win most of their games. But once in a while, they're not going to have it for whatever reason. And you would hope that they have a goalie that in the rarest of occasions, when the best trio in the league, when the reigning MVP a Norris Trophy winner, one of the best goal scorers in the league, when they don't have it, on the rare occasion, it's nice to know that the goalie can help out, can do his part. And Mackenzie Blackwood did more than that. That's why the people at Ball Arena were freaking out. That's why Avs fans on their couch were freaking out. They haven't seen this. They haven't. Wait, you're telling me there's a game where the Avs are a step slow, their best players don't really have it, but yet they're being bailed out by their goalie? It's rare. Rare is that occasion. And that's why they're going so crazy on Saturday. Now, I will say this for Saturday. Mackenzie Blackwood was in his element. Absolutely. Mackenzie Blackwood comes over from San Jose, where he was peppered with shots repeatedly. Quantity. Right? And it's one of the big reasons why I think you could project Mackenzie Blackwood to actually have better numbers with the Avs, because he won't have to face as many shots. But what he got in his Avalanche debut was, I got to imagine he felt like he was still in San Jose with the number of shots he had to face and he had to save. And he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant on Saturday. Avs play Vancouver tonight. It will be Mackenzie Blackwood in goal again. So we'll see how he follows it up. I'm not, despite what I said at the top of the segment, I'm not ready to retire Mackenzie Blackwood's number, but you couldn't ask for a better debut than he had Saturday. Doing exactly what his predecessors have not been able to do nearly enough, and that is to pick up the guys in front of him for an entire game. Then you couple that with what happened Friday with the Denver Nuggets. Mackenzie Blackwood made his Avalanche debut on Saturday. Friday, Jamal Murray made his 2024 debut. The Jamal Murray that the Nuggets are going to need in order to win a championship. That was the Jamal Murray I saw on Friday. I hadn't seen him up until that point. I saw him on Friday, and you saw the results. A team that the Nuggets have had problems with recently, in being the Los Angeles Clippers, and they blew them out. Why? Jokic didn't even have that great of a game. Why did they, though? Why did they blow out LA? Because Jamal Murray was there. They had Batman and Robin together. And everything with this Nuggets team stems from those two. If those two are right, everything else falls into place. And the Nuggets are almost unbeatable by any team not named the Boston Celtics. The problem is, what game are we on? 25? That's the first appearance of the Jamal Murray the Nuggets need. And you look at the circumstances surrounding the game, not just for the Nuggets, but for Jamal Murray specifically. I know that the Nuggets have long done things the quote-unquote right way, right? They don't skip steps. The team building to get to a championship was done the right way. It didn't succumb to what's been in vogue in the NBA for years, right? Building the super team, looking for the shortcut. Let's dump all these assets to get a star. Nuggets didn't do that. And they were very proud of that. And if you're a Nuggets fan, you have to be very proud of that. Just a little bit more proud of the Nuggets' first title, given the way that team was built. They also have, in many ways, the anti-superstar in the NBA, in Nikola Jokic. Doesn't want the limelight. doesn't want all the attention, and also shows up every day and plays at a high level, is not load managed. There is a reason why other teams load manage their stars. Nikola Jokic, great. He doesn't need it. Doesn't need it. Now, the number of minutes, and one of the biggest positives I saw out of Friday was that Michael Malone resisted the urge to put Nikola Jokic back in that game. I remember a couple of weeks ago when they were playing Utah, there was no chance Utah was coming back in that game, and yet here comes Nikola Jokic. It's like, and you wonder why he's exhausted at the end of the year. You can manage Nikola Jokic's minutes in games, but he wants to play every day. He's remarkably durable. The Nuggets need him to win basketball games. That's fine. Don't low manage him. We have to ask the question, and I'll ask it right now. Should Jamal Murray be load managed? I think he needs to be. I think he needs to be. You saw, not only did the Nuggets have 4 days in between games, which is extremely rare. You're not going to get that other than after the All-Star break. But Jamal Murray had been out for longer than that. And he comes back and he's fresh and he's playing at a high level. Given his history, I think it's reasonable to ask the question of whether Jamal Murray should be low managed. Nikola Jokic doesn't need to be. I think Jamal Murray does. And whatever that looks like, that's on Michael Malone to figure out. But I see Jamal Murray with time off, and I'll say time off, like he was hurt, okay? So it's not like he, pulled a LeBron and said, I'm out, and I'll be back when I'm back. He was hurt, okay? But how many games has it been? How many days has it been since Jamal Murray was on a basketball court and he steps out there and he plays that way? It's not a coincidence. The Nuggets have to be, and we talked about it going into the year, the Nuggets have to be smart about the way they handle their two stars. With Nikola Jokic, he gives you don't have to be as careful with him. With Jamal Murray, you do. And I'm watching that game on Friday and saying, what is why are we getting the Jamal Murray for the first time this year, really? Why are we getting the Jamal Murray that we've been waiting for all year? He hasn't played in one. So part of me says, give it a week, give it 2 weeks. Nuggets are playing tonight in Sacramento. Is he going to look as good? What about the game right after that? If he starts to wear down again, or he ends up hurting something else, pulling something, twisting something, whatever it might be, you have to ask the question of when he's back from his latest stint on the injured list, whether the Nuggets should be a little bit more cautious with how they handle him. I know it's not what they'd like to do, and they've been one of the few teams that's like, no, we're not doing this. We're not partaking in this. And good on them, but there's a reason why teams do this. I don't like it. I don't like it for fans who are paying money to see a team and somebody is sitting out because of load management. Like, I know it's not great, and it's one of maybe the reasons why the NBA is the only one of the major professional sports leagues that's experiencing a ratings decline. But the Nuggets have to think about this pragmatically. They're not getting to where they want to go unless they get the Jamal Murray for the entirety of the playoffs that we saw on Friday against the Clippers. And what gives you a better chance of seeing that Jamal Murray when you need him? Managing his minutes, load management. I think that has to be thought of in the next week or two if we start to see Jamal Murray dip a little bit, look a little sluggish, or hear that he's banged up. They're not winning a title without him. And there's not a trade to be made with Jamal Murray. Can't trade him till March. You got to make do with what you have. And they need that Jamal Murray. It's great to see him again. Missed him. How do you make it so you see that guy when you need him the most? Might have to. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. Coming up next, we'll not do what's driving the show just because came on at 4:00 today as I was making my way to my hotel here in Eugene. So we'll pick up after the top of the hour with the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix. This is 2 games in a row now, back-to-back games, even with the bye week in between, that he hasn't looked great. Is Bo Nix suffering from a crisis of confidence at the worst possible time? Talk about it next here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in Monday edition Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman coming your way from Eugene, Oregon, where tomorrow the Air Force women's basketball team will be taking on the Ducks. And then they will be going down to Portland, as will I, for a Friday tilt against Portland State. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Monday Night Football coming up at the bottom of the hour. We will have the NFC North clash between the Fighting Caleb Williamses and the Fighting Sam Darnolds. How's that for quarterback bias? Bears, Vikings at the bottom of the hour. Falcons and Raiders also tonight. Uh, 16-59. So Broncos win again. Not the prettiest of wins, that is for certain. But they find a way. They find a way to win, and they lean on their opponent, and they say, we're going to make mistakes because we're not at the point of this rebuild yet where the Broncos are playing a nearly flawless game. This team still has holes on its roster. They are still, on the whole, very young. They're ahead of schedule, to be sure, but there's more levels for this team to go, more steps for this team to take. And right now we're at the step of the Broncos will make their fair share of mistakes, but they will not make the mistake. And you saw that yesterday. Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball before he got across broke the plane of the end zone. And then that disastrous throwback pass that the Colts tried, that Nick Benito sniffed out and returned it the other way for a touchdown, which basically clinched the game. But a lot of these Broncos wins have featured them pouncing on a catastrophic mistake by their opponent. But they do make mistakes as well. And this is 2 games in a row now where Bo Nix has seemed to regress back to what he was the first 2 weeks of the season. It was striking how similar Bo Nix played to the way he played the first 2 weeks of the season. First 2 weeks of the season was highlighted by him using his legs and him making poor decisions with the football. And he knew exactly going into it, because he talked about it, what this Indy defense does. They keep everything in front of them. They shrink the field. They shorten the field a little bit. You got to throw in between all of these defenders, and they're counting on you to make a mistake, and they'll pounce on it. And that's exactly what Indy did. Bo Nix played right into their hands. But it's a credit to what Bo Nix has become that it's so jarring to see him play the way he has the past 2 weeks. If I just told you